Welcome to Rehash.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Rehash, a Web3 podcast. I'm your host, Diana Chen, and today we're speaking with Reka and LDF. Reka is the founder of Guild, a membership and rewards platform, and she and LDF together have been working on a new project called Chaos for the last few months. In this episode, we'll be talking about creating and sharing content, curating experiences, and building community in Web3. Before we dive into our conversation, here's a quick word from the Web3 projects that helped make this season possible.
Social media wasn't designed for ads and algorithms. It was made for people. And at Lens Protocol, we're putting people back in control. We're not looking for users' data. We're here to build a community of collaborators, builders, artists, and dreamers ready to unlock a new world of social media. This isn't just an app. It's a flourishing ecosystem of platforms and experiences owned and operated by the developers and creators who are bringing it to life. In the Lensverse, you don't just own your content, you own everything. Your data, your connections, the value you bring to the table, it all stays in your possession, exactly where it should be. As a creator, the Lens ecosystem offers a new set of tools for connecting with your audience. Your data is truly portable and belongs to you. Post once and distribute everywhere in the Lensverse. You can even take your followers with you from app to app. As a developer, you can skip right past building the base layers and scaling your users by plugging your new app directly into Lens's existing infrastructure and community. So whether you create with a brush or a camera, sound waves or lines of code, it's time you got your due. Come create the future of social media with us on Lens Protocol. Lens is the last social media handle you'll ever need.
Have you seen how epic Ambire Wallet is?
How epic it is?
Yeah, cue the music. Ambire is a Web3 wallet that makes crypto self-custody easy and secure for everyone. Instead of relying on clunky seed phrases, you can create an account with the hardware wallet or username and password, secure it with two-factor authentication, and regain access with Ambire's cloud recovery. Need to pay out some contributors or execute a bunch of trades? No problem, Chief. Queue up as many transactions as you want, and when you're ready, execute the entire batch at the same time, paying gas only once. You can even prepay for gas with stablecoins or Ambire's native wallet token, which will get you some cash back. Without ever leaving the Ambire interface, you can manage assets from over a dozen chains, safely migrate them with Ambire's built-in bridge, and seamlessly interact with dApps like Uniswap, Aave, and Snapshot, all within the same transaction. Plus, Ambire is constantly growing their dApp catalog with trusted partners and collaborating with builders who want to establish the new standard for smart contract wallets. So, pretty epic, huh?
Yeah, I already know all that though. I've had an Ambire wallet for months.
And you didn't tell me?
You never asked.
To get involved and truly own your assets, go to ambire.com.
How was your day?
Bad.
What happened?
I bought some NFTs and then they just disappeared.
Sounds like your NFT creator should have used NFT.storage.
NFT. What?
NFT.storage. Come on, I'll show you. With NFT.storage, anyone can easily upload their NFT data to a decentralized and reliable storage network, completely for free.
Wow! How does it work?
Well, instead of relying on centralized and impermanent storage solutions, NFT.storage uploads your files to IPFS and Filecoin. These are powerful peer-to-peer networks that are made for the decentralized web. Thanks to IPFS's unique storage system, you can be confident that once your files are uploaded, they'll be accessible from anywhere in the world for as long as you'd like. They're already trusted by some of the biggest names in Web3, like OpenSea, Magic Eden, and Rarible. By adding files to these networks for free, NFT.storage is helping to turn proper NFT data management into a public good. This will ensure that NFTs will remain accessible and secure in the long run, so you won't get rugged again.
Gee, so I just upload my files and NFT.storage will take care of the rest?
Now you're getting it! Go to NFT.storage today to upload some NFT data of your own, for free. And be sure to follow NFT.storage on Twitter, at NFTDOTStorage.
Reka and LDF were nominated by Louis and voted onto the podcast by Adam Levy, Katie Atherholt, Justin Conley, Dina Burke, Daisy Aliotto, Aaron Soskin, Govern, Christina Beltramini, and Anay Sim. Wow, what a mouthful. So without further ado, Reka and LDF, welcome to Rehash.
Oh my God, I'm like emotional. Thank you so much to everyone who voted for us. We love you.
Just you listing the names.
Right? I was like, this is going on for so long. A lot of people will have like a lot of total votes, but all of them came from 2 or 3 people. I will say you guys probably had the most number of votes from different people. Everybody was like, I want to dip into this duo.
Hell yeah.
This dynamic duo.
We brought the chaos movement is doing its thing, I have to tell you. We barely know what we're doing, but it's working. It's doing pretty okay.
I was going to ask, what exactly is chaos? I know there's some content creation part of it, but what's the update on where chaos is these days?
Good question.
Oh my goodness.
We kind of started just co-creating. We really wanted to. LDF and I were really aligned on a lot of things, where the space is going, where we're going personally, what we're interested in. And so we were like, let's just put out stuff together, show people the way how this can be done. And then we started strategizing, going into all difficult stuff. But at the end of the day, we were just like, oh, why don't we just document the process of us being in Web3 and kind of creating and being friends and living this online crazy life. So I think that
Reka
right
has a
now,
lot of experience with like co-creating with other people and like publishing articles. So that's where we started, was let's just write an article together. We have a lot of these kind of shared points of view on creation. But as we got into it, and that's kind of how chaos has progressed, which is run into a problem, try and fix the problem based on the tools we have available to us, or ask people, and then keep that momentum going. So chaos is a public good.eth was an ENS address that we bought so that we could co-publish on Mirror together, because you can't have a joint account. So it's just funny kind of finding these things that other people are going to have to figure out by doing it. But we were just like, we can't really theorize what creators are going to need if we don't just find out ourselves. So that's kind of been the whole the whole premise.
I absolutely love that. And I've always said learning publicly through content creation is the best way to learn in Web3. But also, it takes a lot of guts, and you definitely have to have a certain level of boldness and decently thick skin to willingly subject yourself to the potential scrutiny that comes with creating content in public. So first of all, props to you guys for doing that. I know you said you started with articles, but there are videos out there. I've seen them. How did you guys decide to start creating videos? Was it scary at all, or are you guys just like so bold and courageous that there was no hint of fear ever?
We were so afraid. We're still,
first of all,
we're like the biggest softies ever. So like we're LDF and I, like our group chat, half of it is just us like reassuring and validating each other. And then we also have a different chat, just the two of us, where we like send in all the good feedback that we got to reassure each other to like continue doing this. But the want came from, well, for me too, as like missing this relatable soft content, like it's non-existent in Web3, and also seeing this next wave of media that's coming in with all the new partnerships forming with like big companies like Starbucks, and they're like coming in through NFTs and memberships and all of that. And I know for a fact that we have to step our game up as Web3 native folk to keep it up with these big companies. So I was just like, whatever smaller Web3 project figures out content and consistently does, even if it's mediocre, but consistently is there in the front lines, it's going to have a head start. So I was like, okay, let's learn this.
Shout out to Rehash, by the way, for doing a lot of that work. But to that point,
for consistently putting out mediocre content. Oh,
continuing to show up. No, I'm just kidding. It is hard. But one of the things that I'm sure you probably feel the same way, like it's so much easier to do with other people, like talking into your phone by yourself, kind of expecting people to show up and care, even if it's tweets, even if it's TikTok videos. Like I've tried all the things, and doing it with another person, number one, makes it way more fun. It lowers the bar for what is valuable to even put out in the first place. And like we were talking about before we even started recording, the videos actually came from Reka and I needing to meet over Zoom to discuss the articles that we were writing. And so we were like, why don't we just record this? We put a lot of thought into what ends up being one static piece that maybe some people read, maybe they don't. But a lot of that like thought process behind what got put out, who knows? Maybe there's something valuable in there. And if not, we had fun doing it in the first place. So it was kind of like, how do we just make more out of what we're already doing instead of putting so much emphasis on the final product?
Totally. That's actually so smart because I've been on so many Zoom calls with people that we were like, this should be, somebody should be like, recording this.
Smart,
the fact
right?
that, well, the fact that all of this alpha and knowledge is just coming out here and disappearing into the ether forever as soon as the Zoom call is over is like, seems like a waste of good content. At the same
time, we're like token gating spaces, right? And we're like, well, how do I add value? It's like, well, I already had to add value in some way, shape, or form. I just lost it.
And then we just got into these like troubles of, okay, what do we use to record these? Where do we store these? And hey, if you're in the USA, I'm in Europe. How do we like comfortably collaborate and share the edited piece of content and all of that? And we also have a burning passion and hate for SaaS. We are not willing to pay for anything. So that makes it harder. So then we also went into like experimenting with a lot of tooling and solutions. And there's much more like hardware issues here that we need to solve to make co-creation and collaboration on the internet more possible. We ran into all of them. We actually wrote down quite a few and like requests of what people need to develop right now to make creators' lives easier. Yours too, because I know you have the same issues that we ran into, except you're like way further years ahead. You have the same issues though, and other communities that are going to create are going to have the same issues. And those requests that we had in like our first or second article, immaculate like hackathon projects or even public goods or whatever, just don't make me pay per month, make me pay per usage, but not month, please.
Yeah. Can you share some of the troubles that you guys encountered with co-creation? Because I've been podcasting for a long time, but I actually don't have nearly as much experience as you do with co-creation.
So it's so funny because, again, it's one of those things where we were like, we'll just jump head first. And we've created content separately ourselves before Web3. And so it was funny. We're like, okay, we have this whole content plan, right? Like we know we're going to have live streams and then we're going to like upload a YouTube video and then we're going to take clips from there. We're going to post them on Instagram. We're going to post them on TikTok. We're going to, like share them against our like individual Twitters. We were interested in AI at the time too. Like, how do we pull transcripts to write the articles for us? Like we had a whole grand plan. And then we would sit down and we're like, all right, our only goal today is to record the live stream that will get cut up into all these different pieces. And we log into YouTube and it's like, oh, YouTube only allows you to live stream from one place as like one account. And it has to be from mobile if you want to even add another person to it. So we get stuck and we're like, okay, hold on. We need now another tool to sit on top of this to even be able to work together. So the co-creation aspect has actually been the biggest one that we've found like breaking both Web 2 tools that actually work really well for content creators. Like we've used Riverside before, like we're using right now. We've tried out like Restream and Streamlabs and all the different monetization models, but they're all optimized for like one person who either makes a podcast or is a TikTok creator. Like you can't reasonably span all of those different things, which is what we were trying to do by like riding this momentum, right? Maybe one day we wanted to jump on and play a game together with other people. And it was just a constant stop and start of either we need to pick one and stick with it and be very consistent, or we can't do any of them pretty much.
I pulled up the list, by the way, and I can share it so you can use it later if you want.
Yes, please.
Our list is co-publishing in a way that resolves to individual spaces. So like, how do collaborators share ownership? If it's on my mirror, LDF is merely a contributor, even though we fully 50-50 made the thing. Like that's not possible. Interactivity of content, evolution of storytelling, multi-article activations, like these quests and journeys on the internet, going into deeper into the content, audience segmentation, not in a financial sense, but in an interest and subgroup sense. Single source publishing. This is my favorite. This is It's non-existent. And this is what LDF and I talked about today in a voice note, is there's no thing where I can collect all my things that I've been posting. I've made the mistake of posting into a different new account. Whenever I had a new idea, I made a new account for it and I started creating content there. It's lost. It's fully segmented. I don't have a place where I can pull in my favorite videos. Well, that too, yeah. Because we are embarrassing, in fact.
I go back and look at TikTok videos. I'm like, there's a new account name watermark on every single one I've done, and I don't want to share any of them.
And
hey,
so,
it's only embarrassing if you think it's embarrassing, right?
Well, we think it's embarrassing. The quality and the audience and it's a learning curve. But still, the best pieces I would like to pull in and have in the sort of publishing later and like have as a big log of my best content. Analytics for full audience across all of my platforms, not just Twitter, not just YouTube, all the things. Repurposing content. This is probably the best advanced place where with AI now. Collaborative tools for sharing larger files. Dropbox, expensive. Google Drive, expensive. It's crazy out here. And then later, revenue handling and sharing that process. These are a stack that we came up with that have issues, especially for multiple collaborators to work on with.
That is a long list. And honestly, it's surprising that there aren't better tools for this yet, especially since we're seeing remix culture become such a big thing with TikTok. And, clearly people are thinking about co-creation a little bit more. I think I am starting to see some more co-creation tools in Web3, like with Web3 live streaming, there's, Coop or the 402 or others similar to that. So people, I think, are starting to recognize these problems that you've just highlighted and are starting to build the tools for it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see more projects at hackathons that are focused on, co-creation.
Well, that was our big thing, was like, we also saw a lot of almost like false starts, or a lot of people that were excited about Web3 social as a concept without ever having run into these problems firsthand. And so when people build tools that they themselves don't use, it can be easy to rely on replicating what already exists. And so what we found by trial and error was like, YouTube still is the best for a lot of things. Like the Web2 tools that we're using are good for a lot of reasons. And so finding those things that Web3 can do that Web2 never could is kind of where the sweet spots are. And then finding how those two things work together, because you can't just expect to completely get rid of the existing Web2 stack and start from zero. It's just going to take us too long to catch up, and there's too much to build. And so, finding those intersections of like, realistically, we ended up still using Zoom and Restream and YouTube, and we're still relying on Twitter. And then finding what to put on top of that has been also kind of freeing, because we didn't feel like we were LARPing either, where it was just like, we're Web3, so we only use Web3 tools.
I think that's a common mistake people make, is thinking like, oh, because I'm Web3 native, I can only use Web3 tools. But really, like, the purpose of Web3 is how can we improve upon the the internet that we're already existing on, right? Like, what can we take from Web3 that will make our current lives better? Not like, how do we just become Web3 maxis and completely reject anything from Web 2? Like, that isn't going to serve us well in the long run. That's kind of just, being extremely stubborn in a viewpoint that isn't right.
Absolutely.
Speaking of content in Web3, something that more and more people are doing is minting their content as NFTs and talking about content that's worth collecting. And Reka, you actually tweeted this morning, which is so timely. What is content worth collecting? And I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on what is content that's worth collecting.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll answer first since I tweeted this. I didn't get any satisfactory answers, to be fair, although I do have limited reach on Twitter, but I didn't get like very spicy answers I thought I would. LDF, looking at you, why didn't you answer a spicy thing?
I'm waiting to hear your thoughts.
Anyway, my thoughts. I made up my mind that I think what I would collect, it's either something that relates to supporting a friend. I think that's the majority of what I've been collecting so far. It's just supporting someone else's initiative that I really like. Maybe I didn't even read it, but I did collect because I support. And also the experience, something that makes me remember of the full experience, something that's really beautiful, like a piece of video maybe, or, audio, all these other coded NFTs and everything that can be beautiful. And the third thing is the further utility, which I actually think I got as an answer. And I also think that's the same. Something that will give me something like a Rehash NFT of voting power, something that will let me choose something later, enter a group, go to an event, give me a discount later, allow me to watch the season, if anything. So I think we have to think about this similarly then. I was a person in my teenage years, when I went to a concert, I kept the ticket forever. Like I had to throw it out eventually because it was a lot. But you're keeping that because it's an experience. It's a memory. It's ugly. It's dirty. Ew. Gross. But it is a memory. It's an experience. You're collecting it. Same with the magnet from a vacation. That's prettier, useless, but it's a memory and combines the first two. And then the third thing could be, as an example, is me collecting it, and the further utility is that I can only watch the second season of the series if I've downloaded the first season, so that I'm completing the season of the story consecutively instead of just like jumping in and third season and like I don't even know who is what in this character. Why are they in this job? Like it has a progression, and this is something that I would collect. I don't see the point in collecting just to make on-chain data for myself. Since we don't have that good remix tools yet, maybe that's not very valuable. But all the other things, if it has a speck of promise of utility or it makes me evoke an emotion with experience or beauty, I'm in.
I love
what
that.
What a great answer. Okay, LDF. Pressure's on. How do you beat that?
I'm not going to beat it. I'm going to build on top of it because I completely agree. Number one, like basically anything that I collect right now is to show support for the person who created the content, because the reasons that you mentioned, in addition to the fact that I don't feel like we've built enough really amazing native experiences that require those on-chain actions, right? So I actually think, to your point, Reka, about the immediacy of knowing what you needed to have done in order to get something else is something we need to like be building a muscle for, right? Which is like, I think the whole mirror, like subscribe and have access to something immediately. I think Adam Levy is actually doing this really well right now. But we need to build our own like native experiences, because similar to convincing someone to get a wallet to then promise them that they will be able to do a bunch of stuff in the future, as opposed to saying you want this thing and you need to complete this step in order to be able to do it. It reminds me a lot of kind of performance marketing, which is my background, right? Which is like, look, you saw an ad for something that was perfectly timely and you bought it right there because it made sense and was relevant in that experience, as opposed to hoping that you're going to have utility later. And I actually think Rehash is a good example of that too, because Reka and I are pretty big joke DAO maxis. And so it's really easy to say, hey, my friends are participating in this activity. I realize that I need to do XYZ in order to be part of that. It's not, I hope that I'm going to care about governing a treasury at some point necessarily, although that might be like an added benefit later. But that's why it seems silly, but we keep coming back to like wanting merch or wanting to get into an event, like having more activations and more moments in time that people want to get into so that they even want to acquire the key that got them in the first place needs to be a much shorter time frame, which is funny because right now, like, we have a lot of NFT mints that have been that moment, right? That was the thing that everyone did at the same time. We saw it with these open editions recently, like building up the hype, having the moment that everyone actually has an activity to do. But we need activities beyond just getting and acquiring that, because it still does take an extra step. To your point, like I've read a lot of mirror articles that I haven't collected, either because that wasn't a feature when I did it, or because it's just an additional step and now I need to worry about what am I on the right network and how much does it cost? And honestly, the experience of collecting is very different than the experience of buying. And sitting and looking at my wallet and having my very meaningful NFTs that are representative of my friendships and my support, that's different than an asset that I'm looking at that I might sell for a premium or my art. And so I'm really looking to creators to create more of those experiences where NFTs are kind of just like sitting underneath the surfaces, or we are passively collecting this information about ourselves. Like Diana, even just getting a proof of a credential of being on this podcast before. I don't go stare at that accomplishment all the time, but to know that I can present that about myself when I connect my wallet is something that means a lot to me and is a very different experience than just having kind of like a trophy case to look at, which is what we have with like OpenSea, which I don't go spend a lot of time just staring at all day.
I think an interesting thing that both of you hit on is you really emphasize that utility piece of why you would collect a piece of content. And one thing that I didn't hear from you guys is talking about the quality of that piece of content, which I think is the narrative that I've personally heard the most of, is this content has to be high quality. That's kind of, when we think about content in the traditional world, where we always think, well, it's about, you have to put out good quality content and then you have to know how to distribute it as well. But actually, why did you guys not mention the quality of content piece?
I feel like I grew up watching like 20 pixel YouTube videos 30 million times because it was funny and it allowed me to hang out with my friends. And I don't know, but at least for me, even if it's not nice, I don't think we're there in the art, and I don't have these expectations of the space yet. Like if you're creating nice things and all of these other things that we talked about, the utility, the experience, you won. And I don't think anybody does that. Like I don't have the expectation that it's actually pretty. Like LDF is saying, I'm not gonna look at it all the time in my wallet. It's there. Also, I almost died saying that from now on, we're gonna introduce ourselves as, "Hi, I'm Reka. I have a credential of being on the Rehash podcast," because it's the price.
Yes. Credential incoming very soon.
Oh yeah.
It's so funny.
Sorry, I think that's the reason.
Think, to your point, which is actually a little bit different for me, I feel like we're separating these two things of enjoying a piece of content. Like what we're talking about is the experience of interacting with content, right? And so I don't really think right now we don't need to collect a podcast NFT in order to be able to watch that episode. That's more akin to a view than it is to a like or saving it to your favorite videos or something like that. And so I think we're like separating those two things in the same way that you can only, collect an NFT piece of art to have it displayed in your digital space that you own. It's not really about ownership with content, because the expectation is that way more people are going to get to enjoy it than are going to be collectors of it. So I just think those two things are very different and have different expectations, even though that's kind of the only thing we can do with them right now is like gate access to their physical being.
Yeah, totally. And I think like the curating experiences piece of it is, I understand why you both sort of emphasize that point a lot. And I know that's something that you think about a lot, Reka, is curating experiences. And you talk about Guild as a tool for curating experiences. Can you kind of just dive deeper into what you mean by curating experiences? I feel like that's kind of a buzzword. We're going to play a game at the end with a bunch of buzzwords, but I feel like that in and of itself is probably a buzzword that like, it sounds great. And everyone here, if you say that to anybody, they're like, oh, hell yeah, let's curate experiences. But then once you sit down and think about it, you're like, wait, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, we have this conversation a lot in the team because, I'm kind of the like messaging and like communications person. So I love buzzwords and I think about buzzwords a lot. But yeah, what does it actually mean? I feel like when we talk about like how best curate experiences, I always go back to the experience part and like, would I go? Like, would I do this? And, would I do this if I was busy? That's something to jump. Like if I had 10 million things to do that day, would I still do it? If so, successful curation. But other than that, I think the the thing that we should talk about here a lot is the personalization aspect of it. That is the uniqueness that we can bring with Web3, is having the ability to uniquely create experiences to the individual while still having the group experience. I think that's the spicy part. Like using blockchain assets in combination with off-chain data in the context of communities is super mega powerful. It's so interesting. And essentially making it very easy to work with tokens, NFTs, and all these Web3 native stuff, and extending the capabilities of any smart contracts that people don't usually care about is a good skill to have. And I feel like that's a personalization, and this use case is very, very natural to guilds and how we built our product as well. And personalizing journeys for users, for community members, for onboarding, for activations, engagements, and all of that. It's the new standard across platforms. And I feel like that is something that all communities have to consider, and all brands and all like internet teams have to think about. And we're working towards this to make it extremely modular too, creating this very personalized, engaging, and rewarding experience for users, while also providing very valuable personalized data and insights to the brands and people who are building these experiences so they can build even better ones. This is something that I really want to see in the future. And we're with Guild, we're building towards this future where the community builders or these brands are focusing on how can we give more value so that the person enjoys their time the most and have the data to do so and like the input to do so. And then the member who like is on their journey have this like very shared community and group experience in these tiny niches and subgroups of the internet and granular pieces of the internet, while also chasing what this experience gives them, which is the actual value, and don't feel very extractive, even though everyone benefits in this scenario.
For anyone who doesn't know what Guild is, it's essentially a UI that lets you curate experiences, for lack of better words, by gating access to various things, rewards, activities through your token ownership, right?
Thanks for the pitch. Yeah. And also like...
hey, it's only fair. It's only fair. Both of you have pitched Rehash so much already, so True. It's only fair I return the favor.
It's requirements, roles, and rewards. And the requirement is the very juicy side that we focused on this year. So like 30 plus things you can involve. These are off-chain, on-chain, all of that, and you can combine them infinitely. Roles are sometimes hidden, but they're just cool membership signals or curation points or like recognition within a community signal. And then rewards are the actual interesting things. That's something that we're focusing on this year more, not just thing that you can claim, not just group that you can enter, but what else can you do with those? That's the T.
Love it.
Alpha. And
LDF, anything to add?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the thing I'm so excited about this because I feel like Reka and I almost get to play these two roles where we're saying the same thing, but we get to like say the other side of what is enabled by everything that she just described, right? I'm super excited about the fact that personalization on the internet, and you said this in different words, like the limiting factor now is time and attention, right? We're not producing physical goods. And it's funny that that's kind of the genesis of where we're starting right now with artificial scarcity of digital assets. But where we're going is kind of limitless in that digital spaces are infinite and time and attention and care are very scarce for human beings. And so in the way that Guild acts as like these gates that allow you to have very granular personalization for the spaces that you're curating, it also means that as you pass through these gates, you are creating what I call like data exhaust that powers future personalization in experiences. And so as I think about my work at Disco and trying to basically capture off-chain actions that can inform these on-chain decisions, I'm really excited about people doing exactly what you said, Reka, which is like what do I actually care about and want to do? And how do I use that as a vehicle to make my experiences moving forward better? Not because someone incentivized with a carrot for me to jump through this hoop, but because I already passed through this space and other people made that decision of their own accord. And now we can use that information to create more personalized experiences for others. So again, like technically on the blockchain, Reka and I got voted onto this podcast. There is like proof and breadcrumbs of those actions that essentially made this a gate to getting on to be able to record with you, Diana. And now because of that, we need to be able to have a data point coming out of this that allows you to give us custom merch that no one else can have access to and not have to know who we are on Twitter, reach out to us, message us, ask for our address, all this information and exchange between individuals. Like it's all kind of just human coordination right now. And so I'm really excited for the idea that curating experiences doesn't look like there's 100 NFTs, who's going to get them, but like, what was the demand for this piece of content, this creator's merchandise, whatever. And that creates not artificial scarcity, but actual scarcity based on demand that 10 years from now, when Rehash is the number one, like media network in the world, we're like incredibly proud that we can prove that we were here and not like, oh, we bought an NFT that we thought we could sell later because someone else is going to love consuming your content. So like creators are the ones that are curating the experiences that are giving us the data to have more personalized experiences in the future. And people that are participating in Web3 are creators of information. And I think that's really, really cool.
By the way, just one sentence. This is the best part about having both LDF and I on the podcast because we're saying the same thing. We have same opinions, but we say it so differently. So it's like if someone's more aligned with how I explain it or how LDF is explained, everybody finds what they're looking for. It's perfect.
It's so perfect.
If you agree with us.
It's so perfect. If you do not agree with them, you can slide into their DMs on Twitter or just call them out publicly. As you've heard, they already are big softies. So I'm sure anything you say will bring them to tears
might
immediately.
Cry, but we will probably respond.
I can promise a few tears, but you'll never know.
So with curating experiences, I think a big part of that, to sort of break it down into more granular pieces, is in order to curate experiences, you need to first have somebody to curate those experiences for. So when we think about building a community in Web3, which I see as being very different from building an audience, and I think sometimes these are used interchangeably, and I don't think they're the same thing. I think building an audience is, you're talking about distribution and growth, like how do I get the most people to listen to my podcast, for example. Whereas building a community is really about building an active group of people who care about your product, your works, your podcast, whatever it is, the people that are actually out there nominating you guys on the podcast, voting you guys onto the podcast, that's the community. So when I think about like the difference between audience and community, I sort of think that Web 2 was super focused on building audiences. It was all about growth marketing, distribution, growth, all of those things. Whereas in Web3, the focus seems to be more on building community. And this might just be a gross generalization, but do you guys agree with this generally, high level?
Generally, yes. I do have a lot of examples of large Web2 companies that are rocking the community space, but generally, yes.
Fair. Yeah, that's totally fair. Not to discredit all Web2 companies. There are good ones too. So when you guys think about building an audience, building a community in a Web3 project, like how do you think about sort of striking that balance?
I think the word you use that's perfect is optimized for, right? Like certain actions, certain tools are best for distribution as opposed to cultivating, like owners of something. It's really all comes down to the funnel though, right? Like I used to work at Facebook and I found it so frustrating that there was this obviously audience of billions of people that we considered to be like users of the product. Then there were creators that emerged that were essentially like super users of the product who found a way to monetize them using what was a free product in the first place. Then there was like advertisers who were obviously the monetization engine of the company. And so what they said had a lot more weight than an individual person. And then there were employees who obviously had access to a lot of information that could enable them to make decisions on behalf of this. Like, this is really just different roles. And in Web3, I hear a lot of people talk about it as like a community onion that has different layers that play different roles, right? We call them like lurkers in a Discord, which are people that might be reading the announcements or watching the podcast in the case of Rehash, but like they're not going to buy an NFT either because they don't have the funds to do so, or they don't have the time or whatever. But like tangentially, they're still in the universe. And then I think Web3 is really good, again, at starting where tools that don't exist already are not optimized for, but all of these different things need to play together because, again, time is the limiting factor that we have. And so you can't meaningfully participate deeply with every community. So you kind of have to pick and choose. And I think we need to just be honest about the different roles that people can play, be able to track those behaviors, and then map tools to making those things easier.
And I would imagine there's probably going to be some fluidity between a community member and an audience member, right? So like you said, like you might be a community member in certain communities right now, maybe like 3, and then you're just an audience in every other community. And that's because we have limited time in the day. We can't be active community members of every single community that we have any interest in. But that could shift over time. So maybe you start out as just an audience member of Rehash, you're just a listener, and then you get voted onto the podcast, Reka, and you get airdropped an NFT, and all of a sudden you have nomination and voting rights, and you can become an active community member. So these roles are fluid and can shift over time as well. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how to sort of manage these relationships with your community members as well as with your audience members. And specifically, I think, a big challenge in Web3 is how do we keep our community members active and engaged? And also, how do we make them not feel ostracized and not feel like the outsider? Because that is, certainly something that I think a lot of people feel in this space is that it can be a little bit cliquey, that there's like seemingly this inside group where they've got all these inside jokes and, they just like talk to each other back and forth on Twitter and no one else even understands what they're saying because it's like so inside information. How do you guys think about building and cultivating and maintaining relationships, both with your community members as well as with a broader audience?
I feel like a very tangible example, very Web3 native example is what we're doing with Guild. I can say that very truthfully, I'm doing most of that. Audience, Twitter. Some of community members are also on Twitter, but on Twitter, we do have like 60,000 people who are not necessarily in our community. And just to preface, when I talk about our server, I'm only saying it as that's the main channel for our communications with our community, but our community is spread across Telegram groups and even Twitter itself. So it's incredibly difficult to like get a hold of them and like get deeper interactions going. These overlap, super interesting. And I feel like a community becomes really powerful from the state of being an audience member. And I like how you said with the Rehash example that from audience, it usually goes the funnel within to be a community member. It goes backwards too, but from audience, a community becomes really powerful when the interest, the alignment, and the incentives are in balance. And that's so hard. And I feel like building an audience is so much easier. And we have so much more experience about it with like traditional social media stuff and like content and posting. Building a community is so much harder. And I don't know, like it's terribly difficult for the balancing and the building of relationships. I think you have to think of this as like at the same time one thing, but also two very different types of activities that you have to do as a person who's like the community person or marketing person. That's also very Web3 native, is we also say that these two things, like community and marketing, is the same person usually, because it is kind of, for us, it worked out really well that we do have how LDF was saying these onion parts is that there's always a part of the audience who are lurkers, who are people who just want to see whatever we put out, and that's about it. Like they don't care about vibing or getting into the inside jokes and the inner part of the community. And your job is to let them see how they can do. Like every time they see and interact with anything that you put out as a person in the audience, it's your job to let them know how they can get into and be a community member. And there's a clear path. If you want, you can come. And then it gets deeper and deeper, and then it gets more difficult because it's less people. Like the deeper you are in a community, it's less and less people, but it is still getting more difficult to how much gatekeeping do you want to do? Because there's super incredible amounts of value in keeping groups small and cozy. The most value exchange occurs with less than 6 people. And let me tell you, our groups is not 6 people. So we have to work on that. But for you to have this like open gateway so that people who are actually want to contribute, are interested, want to be very active community members can see the way, it's really difficult. But I fully just talked about onboarding now. I'm sorry. But that is like a current problem that I'm doing. Other than that, like incentives and activations and engagements, I have to go back to my question. Would I go? Would I care? If I was busy, if I was part of 6 other communities, even if I'm super hyped about this community, would I do it? If I wouldn't, I'm not going to have the event. I'm going to tell them, babes, I'll see you next week, but I'm not going to host this event just for the sake of hosting it. I think that's one of our value adds in the guild community. It's no BS. It's we are here, we're giving you something, or we're not here, and you can do your thing.
That's something we've like really had to exercise as a muscle, like the two of us for chaos, because we were doing this like outside work only because we wanted to, right? So one of our core principles was like, if we feel like this becomes work, it comes across like not only in our content, but like in our engagements with other people. And if we can do anything, then we better be very sure that the things we do, we actually wanted to participate in. And one of the things as like a former like reformed marketer that I'm trying really hard to get people to understand, especially because I feel like a lot of protocols and product teams are very developer and like product centric. They do group together marketing, communications, community building, onboarding, user experience, all that stuff. And it can be very easy to see a community as this static thing where the goal is to convert as many audience members as possible to be core team members, which, as we described, doesn't work either, right? You don't need 10,000 core contributors all fighting over work that 10 people could have done. And so I think about it a lot about the depth and like speed at which you can catch someone up to the context they need to be more impactful as lurkers or as people that engage with less time. So for example, again, like I have kind of been involved even in Rehash as like a very outspoken, I think, like advocate of the work that you're doing. Do I hang out in the Discord all the time? No. Is it one of the Discords I have remained in as I've continuously like gotten rid of other spaces? Yes. And therefore I feel like if you reach out to me or if someone reaches out to me or if Rehash comes up, like I'm very well suited to pitch you for a partnership or to introduce you to someone or for us to collaborate. Like that's incredibly important, especially because these communities are kind of like springing up and changing, and the individuals in between them have a lot of overlap. And so to your point, even about like insiders, I think it's important for us to figure out what roles actually need to get played on behalf of organizations and products that are getting built, because there's certain jobs anyone can do with the correct amount of time and getting up to speed. There's certain things that individuals are very well suited for, and those roles and people's ability to commit change daily, weekly, monthly, and that should be our goal, is for the right person to find the right role as quickly as possible and to move on. Because I think we're almost like out innovating even the work we're doing, and that's not something that people are used to, especially in traditional roles where it is like, you come in at 9, this is your task list for the day, this is going to be your job for the next couple of years. So yeah, I think just really like leaning into our intuition of like, how do we make our own lives easier with our own networks is going to make other people's lives easier.
Also, this isn't something that should be financialized. That's not the point of the community. And one more important note, aside from being non-financial, is it's not going to be scalable. How you do the most value and give the most value isn't going to be scalable. Let's say I'm hosting an event and I'm giving people badges. I'm distributing POAPs. That instantly, I just turned it into an audience thing. Like it's already not going to be a community thing. And the meaningful parts that make a community, this like common interest, great. You can scale that. You can, with all the data and all the things that we've talked about, you can kind of scale that eventually. But getting people with the right incentives to do the right things is not really scalable. You can't skip the relationship part. Like if we talk about a community, you can't skip out on building relationships. That's the core part of it, I think. Although that might be only required in the very depths, actually, if I think about it harder. Because the outer layers, like you guys, like the example that Eddie have just said, how like I'm part of the Rehash community. I consider myself part. I'm not even in the Discord though. So like maybe, and we haven't talked yet personally. So maybe actually it is. Maybe I'll hold that thought.
It's interesting you say that though, because it almost feels like what you're describing is that in order for tools to be scalable, you need to focus on the things that are not scalable and not try to conflate those two things, right? Like if a group chat that has 6 people in it is incredibly effective, like I think building tools for those people to be a community is scalable to other groups of 6 people, as opposed to being like shove more individuals into that group that's already working and now it's not working anymore, you know?
And I think when we were talking about whether something is scalable or not, we're also talking the amount of scale is going to differ depending on which layer of the onion we're talking about. So I think Reka, maybe you're thinking more of the core contributors at the center of the onion. And that is only going to be scalable to a certain extent. Like, but at the same time, we don't want that to scale indefinitely. We want the outer layer of the onion to scale indefinitely. And that's your audience. That's like your, really remote lurker, maybe listens to like one podcast episode every, month or a couple of months or something. And you still want them around and you appreciate them, but, not all of them are going to convert deeper into the onion, into the core layer, nor do you want that. And I think that was like one of the biggest insights I got from what you guys both just said, is that there are different roles on the spectrum from, lurker audience member to core community member. It's like a very long spectrum, and each part of that spectrum is important. And we want people to exist at each part of that spectrum. And the goal isn't always to push people towards one end of the spectrum. And I think like recognizing that and taking a step back and like identifying which roles exist on that spectrum for your project specifically, and then thinking about how you can nurture those relationships, like how you nurture a core community member who's super active, like LDF, who's like shilling us without me ever asking and stuff. Like I want you to keep doing that. So how do I nurture that relationship with you is going to look very different from how do I nurture a relationship with, our casual listener who doesn't want to or doesn't have the time to become a core community member, but I still want them to keep casually listening to the podcast. And that's going to look different. And that's okay. And that's good.
I think what I meant, and now thank you for expanding on your thoughts on this, because that made me realize what I meant by not scalable. How you find the LDFs, whatever.
There can only be one LDF in the world.
Yes, it's legit impossible to say there's more. So perfect. So how do you find them? And then how do you nurture that relationship so that there's more people who shill you without asking or fulfill this role? That is something that's not scalable. Like if there's multiple cores, eventually there's multiple cores of that onion because your community is growing and there's needed to be different sub-guilds, subgroups, whatnot, different cores, different focus areas. Finding those and like making that group work and like getting to know them and finding them through the larger community, that's something that's not scalable.
One of the things that I find super interesting is, I know I said the word network earlier, but one of the things I think is very different about building brands in Web3 as opposed to Web2 or what we're used to is, and to this point of it not being scalable, there's a difference between the role that I play for Rehash, which might be scalable, right? Like we have affiliate marketing not that Rehash doesn't pay me. Just want to get that out there. But like we have built structures for people to support brands in traditional world. Now, how did I come to play this role? I like Diana, and like we have, like developed kind of like a relationship through Twitter and whatnot. Like in the same way that individuals support each other, I use Guild, I shill Guild, like that is also partially a byproduct of my relationship with Reka. It's not like a one-to-one relationship, but point being, like, again, I think that there's room for more people to have those deep connections with other people. And I think we saw this with NFTs, where it became this weird relationship between the people that were willing to play the community building role of hosting spaces, for example. They became like seen as influencers and seen as the people you needed to go to understand the NFT space. That is not scalable. Once there are more than 100,000 projects, they're not going to be able to point you in the right direction. And it's funny with crypto, I've kind of seen this with the different almost like classes of people that have entered the ecosystem. They've found their core group of friends and contributors that they have a really strong relationship with. Those products people are building are kind of dependent on each other because they need to play different roles. And we describe it as kind of like Lego building very often. But those relationships themselves are not scalable, but the model is. And so there's a difference between being able to convert an audience member to be a core team member and it being the person that you actually converted, which I think is why it's really important for us and people that are in this ecosystem right now who are building products to be users of them, to lean into their networks, to deepen their relationships, and then make it easier for other people to do the same. Because if we speculate on behalf of what other people are going to want, we will never build products for anyone, and we will just make ourselves lives harder.
I just became conscious and realized that it's three ladies sitting here being really smart. And I became really excited.
Yes. Yes, I love that interjection, Reka. That needed to be said on the podcast at some point. Maybe we just take a moment and dwell on this,
Okay.
Did you screenshot it?
No, but I should. But I just feel like the feeling is that we're doing it, like the things that we've been talking about. Or I had this phase in Web3 where I was like women in crypto and like invited to like panels and stuff. And I was always a little bit anxious to talk about it. And I feel like the things that are always spoken on those panels and events and gatherings, we're doing it. And I'm so happy.
I love it. Well, and I can't wait for the day when this becomes normal. Like the fact that you just called that out and that this is like a strange sight.
Phenomenon.
Yeah, strange phenomenon happening right now.
Supernatural.
Like that's what we want to change.
Or an hour, or however long it's been.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this could continue going for hours if we didn't put an end to it. So as we wrap up, can you guys each leave us with one actionable tip or takeaway from anything we talked about today, whether it's content or curating experiences or community building? Give us one actionable takeaway to wrap this up.
I always feel like mine are a cop-out because I just want to be like, just do it, just start, just actually make friends. Like, don't pretend to do the things. Just like trust your gut and do what feels right and you'll be great.
Okay, but how? And name one of those things. Like, just make friends. How?
Go talk to other people on Twitter. Comment on someone's post. Tell them why you liked what they did. Watch a video and engage with it. Don't just passively consume content. Add something to the conversation.
Nice.
Mine would be document more of your journey. Just create whatever format you choose. I don't care. Just do it. Just put stuff. Have a digital footprint for fuck's sake. I didn't want to say that to
that.
Whisper.
Okay, so have a digital.
Yeah, she whispered.
She was like lowercase.
That's the most aggressive thing you could say, but whispers it.
See? Proof of chaos scores. Cozy core chaos score.
Cozy core
like we're
chaos
saying
score.
it. Anyway.
Okay, so just do it. Go create content. Learn in public. Go make friends.
And be as granular with your communities as you can, please. Just have a lot of roles. It's on you to manage it, but people will have a much better time.
Good advice.
That's
solid. Okay, so as we wrap up, we are playing a brand new game this season. Every season we have a game at the very end. This season it's a new game, and since you guys are the first episode of season 4, you have no idea what this is. And you have no way of cheating by listening to past episodes and knowing what is to come. So the game we're playing this season is called the Word Association Game. Have you guys played this before?
I think so.
I know how, but I haven't played it.
Is it okay, when we say... Oh, no, go ahead. Explain it.
I think you're going to say it. It's really easy. It's when you say the first word that comes to mind when I say a word. Okay, so I have this... bad boy. Okay. And there's probably about like 50 slips of paper in here. Okay. And these are commonly overused or misused words in Web3 that I've sourced from Twitter, of course. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw these at random. So I don't know what I'm drawing. And I'm going to read the word, and you are going to say the first word that comes to your mind. Okay. It doesn't have to be smart. It doesn't have to make any sense. But the only rule is you got to say the first thing that comes to mind, so you can't think. And the second rule is the only layer of censorship is you cannot say the same thing I just said.
Okay. So don't repeat the word.
Don't repeat the word. Fair enough.
Fair enough. I'll try.
Okay. First one. Inflationary.
Money.
Mechanics.
Permissionless.
State.
Media.
Company.
Web3.
Okay. This piece of paper isn't opening. Deflationary. Wow, this is getting boring already.
Whoa.
Like mechanics came to mind again.
I'm lacking information.
You can't say the same word for every word I say.
Tokens.
I either had to lie and make up another word or repeat the word that came to mind. Come on.
Already cheating. Look at her.
Okay. Social capital.
Facebook.
Scary.
Reputation.
Badges. Lauren.
Scary.
Oh my God. That's strike 2.
I know.
3 strikes, you're out.
Okay, Black Mirror is the other thing that came to mind.
Okay, that took way too long. We're going to have to speed this up. Exclusivity.
Every rule.
Relationships.
Wait, what was the word?
This might be strike 3.
I'll just
It was exclusivity. Yeah. We've got a winner, Reka.
Because I didn't break the rules.
We've got 2 more. We've got 2 more. Primitive.
Ethereum.
Like what? Nothing.
Okay, you're okay.
Blank mind.
LDF has officially lost this
Head
game.
empty. Oh my God! Please insert the head empty meme. Head empty. No thoughts. Head empty. The little bunny.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna have to.
Before we started the game, she was like, "We sound so smart," and now.
Wow, that changed quickly.
How the
Plot twist.
turntables.
Those were so hard.
Those were hard.
Yeah.
Those are all words that you see on crypto Twitter like 80 times a day.
Shouldn't be saying because they don't mean anything.
I know, that's why this is fun.
But you just have to associate anything else in your life, babes. I said very nonsensical things.
How did we
Reka
get
was great.
inflationary
Reka did
in-
great. How do you
Okay.
explain why Reka did so well?
She's smarter than me.
I'm a doctor.
Well,
We
yeah.
haven't talked about that, but
is a
I have
doctor.
paper that I'm smart.
Oh my God. Okay. So I know I said that was last theme, but can we just talk real quick about how you're a vet?
Yeah.
I think I should
I'll
just
tell you.
leave.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do that. Yeah. All right, Reka.
See you later. No. Yeah. Okay. So long story short, 16-year-old me chose this path because I loved English, biology, and my dog. And I knew I wanted to be smart, rich, and successful. So I chose the best thing. I also wanted to do higher education. I didn't just want to be like I'm not a coder. I can't just make an app and be rich. I was like, I want to have a fulfilling life journey. So I chose the best thing that I knew, which was being a vet. This had everything that I wanted. And I did the thing. But during uni, even though I had the best friends, the best time, I was like, okay, what about management in vet practices? What about psychology and like social media? And I realized I'm not an employee person. And I also realized I need so much more freedom than sitting in a clinic or going in my little car and like putting my hands up animals' butts.
Preach.
So I was like,
Oh,
I need
yeah.
to
That was
travel. I need to take breaks whenever I want. I did my thesis in like burnout and mental health on the vet field. So I was like, okay, she's not really medical, is she? And I also started this like student org because I was obsessed with organizing people and making big things happen. And I had this startup during university too about fishes and plants and how to produce food for everyone for relatively cheap. And amongst this, I was already in crypto since a long time. And I met my co-founder who I knew since I was a teenager. And Robert, who's not here right now, but he's usually here in the office, he was like, you come work for me, do my social media. I'm like, cool. What are you guys doing? And they did this software firm. And I'm like, funsies. I was still in school. It was crypto. It was COVID. And I had so much more time. I was like, great, this is online. I can do this anytime. And that was my end. And I just finished vet school less than a year ago. We already had Guild by then. So I gave birth to Guild way sooner than I got my diploma.
Did you? Yeah. Wow. Graphic
Gross.
again.
Sorry.
The imagery. I mean, that must be vet talks. Did you ever think about like quitting vet school once you started Guild and that was successful? Or did you always know?
No. Baby, I worked for this since I was 16. I didn't get accepted the first time. I really wanted that. So I was like, great, we can have just both. I'll have a solid plan B as a diploma and finishing. And I didn't want to quit. Like I was so close and it was so easy to finish after that. Like the last year was mainly practicals and like very, very easy stuff aside from a few crying breakdowns and exam periods and all of that. But the rest was really easy. And honestly, the whole thing, like building Guild and being in crypto and startups is so much harder. I learned more than I did in vet school, although I don't know anymore. But in the beginning, I definitely did. So that was the journey in rough summary.
Wow. That's super inspirational because I feel like during the last bull run, so many college kids like dropped out because they got jobs in crypto.
Stupid.
And they're like, why would I continue in school?
You learn so much that it's not just the diploma. Like I went to pitch competitions during school time because they like subsidized that. They offered opportunities. I learned how to like essentially organize people into this entity to teach each other with free labor. And I had to like incentivize them. Like I'm using all of that right now. And nobody taught me that if I didn't go to that school. So it's not the diploma that you're working for. It's all the extra appendix experiences that you get from it.
So true. And you can help animals now. You have to join Toby DAO.
I will. Whenever
You're
I
more
get
than
the
qualified.
badge.
East Denver, Toby will be there. You just scan his dog tag and then you're in.
Will do.
I can't believe I'm not in Toby DAO. We can join.
You're
at
not?
the time.
We
No.
can
Have
hop
you
in Denver.
Yeah. Have you not met Toby?
I've met Toby, and that's even worse. See, I have no proof of it. This is horrible.
Wow.
No picture, no nothing.
She
I
was
can drop you an
gatekeeping.
NFT. Wait, where did you meet Toby?
Gatekeeping at MCon.
Oh yeah, that's right, you did. Okay, yeah, I'll drop you an NFT. That's only
How do
fair.
you bring a dog to conventions? I'm amazed.
He just follows me. Everywhere.
Cute. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. In the US, you can take dogs everywhere. That's it.
Before you guys go, tell people where they can find you if they want to follow you or comment how amazing your videos are. And feel free to plug away at anything else like Guild, Chaos, anything else.
All of that. And just put our links in the bio.
All of that.
Sure.
Like
All the links will
Follow
go in
us
the
on-
show notes.
Follow us on Twitter. Use Guild for any of your community needs, whatever you're starting with your friends or more serious stuff. It's going to be helpful. I promise. We worked on that. And Chaos is now a movement/experience. You can follow LDF and I along, and it's kind of decentralized. We didn't end up making like an entity or a website for it. So just follow both of us and you'll see it.
Yet.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes, true. Alpha.
Soon, TM.
That's right. And if you make videos that are chaotic, send them to us because we want to see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
LDF_GM on Twitter.
Yeah.
Reka_ETH on Twitter.
Yeah.
Those are your follows.
Yes.
Go do it
Thank
now.
you.
He's like, let me teach you what to say when I ask you again. Where
Have to plug yourself properly.
All right. Thank you both so much for coming on the podcast, being the first episode, being brave enough to play our game for the first time. And one of you did extremely well and the other one not so much. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And we will be back again next Thursday with a new episode of Rehash. See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Rehash. Rehash is hosted by Diana Chen, produced and edited by Ellie Dots and Tyler Internet, and sponsored by Lens, Empire Wallet, and NFT.storage. Rehash is also supported by Rehash DAO, a community of NFT holders who curate our guest lineup each season. To get involved, head over to our website at rehashweb3.xyz and collect this episode as an NFT. Anyone who collects an episode becomes a part of Rehash DAO and will be able to nominate guests for future seasons. Voting rights are reserved for our guests, sponsors, and OG crowdfund supporters. And to learn more about how to become a guest or sponsor, go to rehashweb3.xyz/podcast. Finally, be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at rehashweb3 or on Lens at rehash.lens.